everyone. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the second half of November, a very powerful month, and the full supermoon that we have in Taurus on the 15th. And just before I get into that, I'd just like to welcome any new subscribers and just thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the incredibly loving supportive comments you send to me. They mean the world to me. I read every one, and I'm deeply grateful because I wouldn't be doing this without you. So I'm delighted that these videos can help you in some way. And I just wanted to, I don't say it often enough, so I just wanted to say a very big thank you for all of your interaction with these. We're co-creating. Even just watching these videos, you're co-creating. So, a very powerful month. We know this, we can feel it. You don't need me to tell you, but we are going to have the fourth supermoon in a row on the 15th of November. And what a supermoon is it means that the moon is very close to the Earth in its orbit, and so it has a greater pull on the tectonic plates and also on our psyches. So we feel the intensity of that. Now, I'll show you the chart in a moment, but this full supermoon is happening at 24 of Taurus. And so see where that falls in your chart, because any full moon is a great time of completion or culmination or closure. It's the peak of the moon cycle. And so if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can download a free birth chart from my website. Go to the link below. You can get a 2-part video series that you can watch forever, to infinity, as many times as you like, with every update I do to help you understand the meaning in your own chart. But this is usually a point of culmination, closure, completion in that area of life. And so often a full moon is not only a time to release what no longer serves you, but it is very often, it highlights, it shines a bright light on what we hadn't known before, and that encourages us to tack, to change direction, to modify our direction going forward. So it's very often a time when secrets are revealed, and I think that's going to be particularly the case with this one, particularly when it's a supermoon, because the light is so bright. The supermoons, we see them bigger and brighter in the sky than the average moon. And so we have a lot of intensity, not only because even if it's in Taurus, which is a fixed earth sign, the peak of the moon cycle always brings with it potentially quite a lot of emotion. And remember, at a full moon, the sun and moon are always opposite each other. So the sun is in Scorpio, probably the most intense emotional sign in the zodiac. And so it's interesting also that this full moon at 24 of Taurus is falling conjunct that very important Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that all astrologers were talking about back on the 21st of April this year, that really one of the main themes of that was truth and awakening. And this full supermoon is going to reinforce that. Whenever you have a very important conjunctional aspect in the heavens, it could be an eclipse, could be a powerful conjunction, it activates a particular degree. It makes a degree hot, if you like. And so it's very interesting this full supermoon is so close to that. That was at 22 of Taurus. This full supermoon is at 24 of Taurus. So it's tightly conjunct. So very much, I think, about awakening and truth, and that is reinforced all the more by the fact this moon, as you will see in a moment, this full moon is very, very tightly conjunct Uranus yet again. Now, what is the sign of Taurus about? Well, this, I think, will most certainly shine a bright light on things like food supplies, agriculture, natural resources. The Taurus Scorpio axis is also about banking and currencies and wealth, finance. And we've certainly seen recently some very big moves with the BRICS countries developing a new payment system. So I think we may see more happening with that. That's very powerful, with so many countries being involved. But this is also the sign of secrets, really, not Taurus, but Scorpio, with the sun in Scorpio. So secrets, big money, hidden money, things that are underhand, underground, maybe coming to light now. And this also, because Uranus is still in Taurus, this may signal another development in digital currencies. Now, it's very obvious to all of us that there are efforts to establish centralized CBDCs, centralized digital currencies, but also there are many, many developments in decentralized digital currencies, microcurrencies even. And the sign Aquarius is about decentralization, ultimately. Mycelium, tree roots, it's local, it's grassroots up, it's no longer top down. So let us take a look at the chart now. So here, as always, I set this for England, where I live. So ignore the clock face, ignore the houses. We're just going to be looking at where the planets fall and their aspects to each other. Now, this is the moon here, sun at 24 of Scorpio exactly, 0 minutes, and the moon at 24 of Taurus. Now, Taurus is probably the most stable of any of the astrological signs. It likes to keep things as they are. Don't shock me. No sudden moves or surprises. It likes to keep things steady and stable as they are. However, here we have Uranus, the planet that is the least stable, conjunct the moon very tightly. It's just 1 degree away. And so this is likely to bring in some sudden surprises, shocks, revelations. Again, Uranus is the planet linked to truth and awakening, as we know. And it could be changes in all the things I've just outlined. Could see more seismic activity, particularly because the moon is so close to the Earth, and that greater pull on the tectonic plates. It could be sudden changes in the financial system in some way. It can be sudden change in geomagnetics. We are experiencing a very high level of solar activity now. We're going to big solar storms over the next couple of weeks. I'm filming this on the 31st of October. So we could see even more unstable geomagnetics that we're all having to adapt to very rapidly. It also is likely to bring up more revolutionary and rebellious behavior on behalf of the people. The moon in mundane astrology is the people. And it is also this conjunction here between the moon and Uranus. They are also square to the moon in the US chart. The moon in the US chart is at 27 degrees of Aquarius. That is, again, the American people, which suggests that it could well be the American people who are feeling most rebellious and revolutionary at this time. But the great thing about Uranus transits is, however Taurus wants to make us hang on to the status quo, don't change, don't rock the boat, Uranus transits always bring in what we have already outgrown at the higher level, what we have already outgrown to kind of jump us into the higher state of being, which we are ready for and at some level have already achieved. So we get out of that stagnancy, we get out of that staleness of that routine. So many of you may be feeling those energetic shifts, those shifts in your body Taurus, as well as fixed Earth. And it is for the good. So even though it may appear to be chaotic or disruptive at times, try and see everything. And I know this is really hard when there's so much enormous stuff happening in the world. But if you try and see everything is for your greater good, and with a challenging situation, step back and say, okay, what is this actually teaching me? What is it making me see in me or my behavior that I need to evolve further? It's coming in as a teacher. And I'm trying to do this more and more in my own life. And I'm actually finding that perspective really, really helpful. So we may find, and this moon Uranus aspect, because Uranus, of course, is the ruler of Aquarius. And in 4 days after this full supermoon, Pluto enters or re-enters Aquarius until it's almost 20 years. It's until January 2044. So this full supermoon in Taurus is setting us up for that final re-entry of Pluto into Aquarius. Now, I think this could well be around because, this conjunction of the moon and Uranus is also conjunct the dwarf planet Algol, leaders losing their heads. I think we could well see leaders becoming losers in this time, leaders becoming losers, and that may continue in the coming weeks and months. And when Pluto finally enters a sign, this happens every time. It tends to bring in a crisis or bringing to light, in the bright light of this full supermoon, around the symbolism of the sign it's moving into. Sometimes it does that immediately, sometimes it takes a few months. But for instance, if we go back to Pluto moving into Capricorn in 2008, Capricorn, one of the meanings is the banking system. And it most certainly, and stock markets, and it most certainly, within a short period of time, brought in a crisis. We had the financial crisis in September 2008. We're all very aware of that. This time around, in Aquarius, this is going to bring up crisis, big issues around science and technology, things like AI. And because Pluto here is at the very last whisper here, 29 degrees, 55 minutes of Capricorn, the anoretic degree, the crisis degree, but Pluto, one of the big themes of Pluto in its shadow expression is around issues of trust and betrayal, issues of trust and betrayal. And Pluto is trine to this conjunction here between the moon and Uranus. So this could prompt these truths, these revelations, issues around trust and betrayal. This is all part of the same picture that's coming to light, I think, at this full supermoon. So the other thing to reinforce some of the things I've just been speaking about here is the sun at 24 Scorpio, sign of secrets, big money, criminal money, underhand, underground, etc., sexual stuff, all of that. So it's exact to the degree. 24 Aries, 24 Scorpio. So this emphasizes Eris's archetype symbolism is very similar to Uranus. They are both about truth, awakening, justice. Eris, remember, was the only goddess not invited to the wedding on Mount Olympus. She turned up anyway and created mayhem by throwing the golden apple into the group of goddesses and saying for the fairest. And they had a huge squabble, which is said to lead to the Trojan War. So she is utterly uncompromising in nobody being excluded, every voice to be heard, no exclusion. So much greater equanimity in society, which is also what Uranus is about, much more equal. So not completely equal, but more equal than we have currently had by a mile. Because the Capricorn energy is top down. It favors inequality, it favors elitism, because power is held at the top. And once Pluto moves into Aquarius on the 19th of November, and this will absolutely not happen in a day, a month, or possibly even a year, but it begins a shift towards the power being held by the people at a more community, grassroots level, rather than from the top. But we have to step into that sovereignty as well. I think it's very interesting here as well that the ruler of this full moon, Taurus, is Venus. Venus rules Taurus, and she is exactly by degree conjunct the dwarf planet Ixion. Now, I've talked about Ixion in the past. Ixion is pretty dramatic in its shadow symbolism. You know, it's less positive expression, in that Ixion behaved extremely badly. He murdered his father-in-law. He was then kind of thrown out of heaven, as it were. Zeus gave him a second chance, but he rather blotted his copybook by trying to rape Zeus's wife Hera. And at that point, he was spun off into eternity on a burning wheel. But even after murdering his father-in-law, he had no guilt, no remorse, so no moral compass whatsoever, even in creating death. So that's one shadow aspect of Ixion. The very different positive aspect of Ixion is that we choose to go beyond the mainstream. We go beyond normal social mores, if you like, and we create joy through simplicity. We create our bliss through simplicity, creating our own pathway through life. It's almost like, you know, you can imagine you have a knapsack on your back. You're creating your own solo journey of joy and bliss through simplicity. And what is fascinating to me is that Ixion, at that very powerful Saturn-Pluto conjunction on the 12th of January 2020, and I do mean 2020, which started off the whole pandemic, Ixion was conjunct the galactic center. Now, the galactic center is really the source, you call it creator source, but the source of so much cosmic energy with which we create our world. So it's an incredibly powerful place for any planet to be. And isn't it interesting? I believe those two very distinct positive and negative themes around Eon symbolism were set up very, very clearly, as well as the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And, you know, we've all talked to death about that in 3 years of videos, that also Ixion was part of the picture, that there was a lower timeline which was established and there was a higher timeline at that time. And I feel that in my bones, and I know many of you will feel that too. Also, what's fascinating, if we go back to that 12th of January 2020 conjunction, the dwarf planet Ceres, goddess of harvests and grains and corn and all to do other food sources and nutrition, was very much, it was right in the heart, right in the center of that Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which was at 22 degrees, 46 minutes of Capricorn. 22 degrees, 46 minutes of Capricorn. Exactly to the minute where Ceres is at this full supermoon. In Taurus, also linked to food supplies, agriculture, harvest grains, etc. And Ceres is also part of this trine, this connection to the moon and Uranus. So I think this is absolutely fascinating, because it's almost like an echo of that original Saturn-Pluto conjunction at the beginning, January 2020. So for me, this is an echo of, okay, how far have we come in establishing perhaps stronger or different food systems since that time? Have they been challenged over that time? You know, where are we? If that was the setup in January 2020, where are we now? It's like a question mark, if you like, an echo of where are we now at with all that's transpired in the world. Also, just to point out that Venus, and I haven't put it in, is also conjunct on the other side at 8 degrees of Capricorn, a dwarf planet called Quawa, that is really linked to, and I credit Alan Clay here, who runs Dwarf Planet University, a kind of community consciousness where we come out of the chaos, we realize there's a price to be paid for the chaos, but we decide to elevate our frequency by song and dance to come together in community, in joy. Because when we come together in numbers, in joy, we can manifest much more powerfully from joy and magnificently from joy than we can from chaos. So it's community consciousness. We also, the very day of this full supermoon, we have Saturn at 12:41 of Pisces, becoming stationary direct. Whenever particularly an outer planet becomes stationary, symbolism is magnified. As we know, this could bring up a lot of issues in water. Pisces is linked to water, seas, oceans. I've had a multitude of plumbing problems since Saturn went into Pisces, because that's in my fourth house of the home, and water in the home. Certainly had a lot of water in my home. But it's also at a deeper level, recognizing that we have to take on more spiritual responsibility, spiritual Pisces, responsibility Saturn, and strengthen our spiritual practice. I felt this very strongly myself, to strengthen my spiritual practice as we move into these more intense weeks and months ahead at the 3D level. And yes, much more to say about that as we go forwards. What is also of great interest here that I want to point out is that Mercury is conjunct something called the Great Attractor, which I've spoken about in the past, and I'd like to refer you to the great researcher and astrologer Philip Sedgwick. I'll put the link for him below. He has done a lot of research into these, far-flung deep space points like the Great Attractor. The Great Attractor is this massive gravitational anomaly in space. It's like a huge cosmic vacuum cleaner. It's moving backwards at 600 kilometers a second and sucking galaxies in its wake. And if you have any planets or angles around about 14 degrees of Sagittarius, keep it tight, 2 degrees either side, so 2 degrees to 16 degrees of Sagittarius, because the Great Attractor is able to bend space and time, you may well have a sense of precognition. You can see around corners. I've mentioned this before, but Philip Sedgwick talks about this in much more detail. So this is big with Mercury in our mental function being conjunct the Great Attractor. It says this is a very big time of really heightening our psychic sensitivity, which is part of the message of both Neptune and Saturn in Pisces. This says it big time. Heightening our psychic sensitivity and our sense of precognition, so we can really get a bigger picture, because also Mercury is opposing Jupiter here. Now, they are in each other's signs because Mercury rules Gemini, Jupiter rules Sagittarius. This is actually what's called mutual reception when they are in each other's signs. So it's almost more like a conjunction. It strengthens it. So this is big, visionary, futuristic, prophetic thinking, big picture. And that's strengthened by Mercury being conjunct the Great Attractor. Now, in one sense, because these are both mutable signs, Gemini and Sagittarius, this can be just 10 tons of information. We are absolutely overloaded on social media, information coming in at us, new ideas. It's very exciting, but it's hard to kind of sift because they're immutable signs. There is so much to take in, so it can be an overload of information, and that's reinforced again by Mars being in a semi-square to Jupiter, even more big thinking. But the very positive aspect of this is prophetic and visionary future thinking. And also it's a little bit wide, but we actually have a T-square here. Mercury is square to Saturn. That's certainly operational, and Saturn is square to Jupiter. That's a long-term ongoing square between Saturn and Jupiter, which won't complete until June next year. But this is, okay, big, visionary, futuristic, prophetic thinking. That is realistic. That is pragmatic, that we can anchor in for the long term. It's strategic, if you like. There is so much happening, so much brilliant work happening with people behind the scenes. It knocks my socks off. Every day somebody's in contact with me talking about the work they're doing behind the scenes, which is absolutely genius level in terms of where we're going in our future, in all kinds of modalities and disciplines, and it's thrilling. We also have, and I've talked about this, I talked about this particularly in the Metamorphosis for Humanity video, and again, I'll put the link for that below. I talked about this square between Pluto, and it's an out of sign square, and Haumea at 2 degrees of Scorpio. Because if Pluto had just tipped into Aquarius, now you could see that more easily, but it is a square. It's quite a tight square, actually. It's just over 2 degrees. And this reinforces this time of transformation, which we are moving through. And we know from all that I've said about Haumea that she's linked to the Hawaiian goddess of fertility, that she can birth babies from all over her body. She is very much a symbol of regeneration. But when she moved into Scorpio, that really alerted me to the fact that I think she's very linked to future medicine, transformational medicine, and in particular, stem cell medicine. And I said that because she had literally just tipped into Scorpio the week I had my platelet-rich plasma, my own blood plasma, injected into my right knee. You know, I had agonizing pain in my right knee and really needed a total knee replacement, and it was just miraculous. I happened across the only orthopedic surgeon in the area who also treats people with their own blood plasma, and it was like a miracle. I can't tell you, you know, within a few days from walking on 2 sticks across a room, I was doing an hour's walk without any support. So, and I also want to thank you again for the hundreds of you that sent me massive healing at that time, which is undoubtedly part of the picture as well. But I just want to read you something, and I shared this a couple of years ago, I think, but it's such a beautiful quote that I want to read it again. And this comes from astrologer Alison Chester Lambert. These are her words, not mine, from her book Starry Messengers. And she talks about Haumea being connected to the original creation chart of the Hawaiians. And in her book, and this is page 145, so you can get to it quickly, she said, in the myth, Haumea gave birth to children from her brain amid slime, and they would become chiefs, islands, or human babies. So to put it in a nutshell, she is Mother Nature transformed into anything. I think incredibly powerful words from Alison. I profoundly believe she's linked to stem cell medicine, particularly in Scorpio, which is that invasive, you know, the sting in the tail, the injection. And she has this great sense of morphing and malleability, because she can morph herself from an old crone to a young maiden and produce babies from all over her body. This malleability and this fluidity is going to be part of our future. You know, for us individually, I'm talking literally for us individually, as we shed density, Saturn in Pisces, Pisces dissolving, Saturn density, Saturn 3D, Saturn linear time being dissolved in Pisces. This sense of our reality is much less fixed, much less fated, much less linear, much more logical, but much less logical. There's this fluidity coming in, which is going to enable us to shed the way we have always lived, and certainly in this lifetime. You know, the linearity, the logical, you've got to do A before you do B, you've got to do B before you do C, lists, to-dos, etc. I can't tell you how profoundly I feel that in my bones, and this is moving quickly. And I really sense we are all going to start to feel that in our dreams, our meditations, our visions. I think we're all going to feel that. Much more of that to come. Now, we have this very powerful opposition between Mars and Pluto. And I've talked about this in the last couple of videos. This was exact on the 3rd of November, or will be. I'm going to release this video just around then. It will be exact again on the 3rd of January, and it will be exact again on the 26th of April. So whatever is arising in early November, whether it's in the outer world or whether it's in your own life, may not fully complete until the end of April. Mars actually doesn't move out of its retrograde shadow until the 2nd of May. So just observe in your own chart. But I think, and I just want to talk about this a little bit, because I'll stop sharing here. Because it is very easy, particularly because it's an opposition, for us to get into a kind of a battle, a fight. You know, it's the individual sense of power versus the top-down power. And I think certainly, you know, so many of us have felt that. And Mars, in its lower expression, you know, think of the archetype of god of war, has typically been id anger. In its shadow expression, id anger. It's connected to the root chakra. It's connected to, particularly while it's moving through Cancer, through issues around safety and security. What can I do to protect my loved ones? It's also primitive. It's reactive. It's impulsive. You know, it's almost how animals would react. Much as I adore animals, it's very much how animals would react. And so what I think this opposition is teaching us, because clearly if we react in that way, that isn't a very helpful way to go forward, because anger tends to beget more anger in the outer reality. It is helping us, I think, to birth sovereignty and to birth inner authority and to birth this masterful sense of quiet strength. And so it's not shouty, it's not violent, it's not waving a placard, it's not on the street. It's a sense of tremendous, I know who I am, I know I operate from my center, I know that my reality is dominated by the emotions I choose each day and the frequency that I'm broadcasting. Everything comes from that, everything. And I know we've lived through a kind of crazy lifetime of thinking everything has come at us, whereas actually we are moving into a paradigm of everything really, really getting that everything comes from us. And I've today particularly, I felt absolutely on the edge as Pluto, you know, I really anticipated Pluto moving into Aquarius, you know, as happened in 1543 with the Copernican revolution. We would be moving into a paradigm shattering time. And I can kind of feel myself on the edge of that today. And I'm not articulate enough to explain that yet, but I will make attempts at that as we go forwards. So I've said so often that our inner state of being is our absolutely top priority. Make that your top. Nothing is more important than that, because everything cascades from that. But the more we can come together in numbers, and this is the Aquarian energy, and whether you do that online, whether you do that even better in person, people of like mind, where you're establishing a family of frequency, and we come together with a common goal to create a more loving earth. We come together in numbers. Zach has said that in his channelings. What counts, as well as your frequency, is your numbers. So we come together in unity, and we become a whole. We become a unified family of frequency, setting the same intentions, operating together with love, always setting a clear intention. This is for our highest good, the highest good of all, and the highest good of the earth. And even doing that will elevate the collective frequency. Even setting that intention will do that. And so really have a sense from now on of using that Mars energy, which is going to be very strong in that opposition to Pluto, as I say, until the end of April, that it is teaching us this inner authority, this inner sovereignty, but also with the Aquarian energy of using that in conjunction with other people, because then the group energy is magnified. And I also want to say that those higher dimensions of New Earth already exist. It isn't that we have to create them from scratch. We can absolutely add to them and embellish them. We can add the bricks and mortar, and we can add to them in every moment, but they already exist. And that's why this sense of dimensional shift is so important, because that can happen in a moment. It isn't that we've got to slog and work through a list and do X, Y, and Z. That dimensional shift can happen in a moment, and we're in New Earth. We're in that frequency. And I think many of us are kind of slipping between frequencies right now. You know, sometimes we're in 3D and then we're back in a higher dimension, a higher frequency, but it's down to our choice. It's where we put our focus on the frequency we are broadcasting. And just know, if that can happen in a moment, it is so available. And then everything shifts. Everything. You know, we are then there, because there are an infinite number of dimensions that are already available for us. It's just a question of where do we put our focus and what's our frequency? And that comes from what we broadcast. So I do believe we are absolutely on the brink of paradigm-shattering times that are immensely exciting. If you can think of nothing better, just keep rolling that mantra around your head of we're welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. We are coming together to welcome in an expanded consciousness of love, and that will keep you in a good place. Thank you if you join the Sunday meditations, 15 minutes all for free, no Zoom, no tech, no recordings. We come together connecting with our hands and our hearts with that common goal. I'll be back very soon. I have some really exciting conversations coming up next week. I can hardly wait, and I hope you'll find them really helpful too. It's going to be busy. So God bless. Thank you for listening right till the end of this, and have a fabulous full supermoon in Taurus coming up on the 15th of the month. God bless. Bye for now.